The most important day in many African countries isn't actually their Independence Day. It's September 28th, 1958. While the world celebrated Africa's march towards freedom, something sinister was being orchestrated in the shadows. On this date, Charles de Gaulle's constitutional referendum will create the most sophisticated system of economic slavery the world has seen. Here's what they don't actually teach you in history class. France never actually left Africa. They simply reorganized their colonial chains. Today, I'm going to show you how France built an economic empire on African dependency and why they literally cannot afford to let it go. By the end of this video, you understand why former French President Jacques Chirac admitted, without Africa, France will slide into the rank of third world power. This isn't just history. This is happening right now and it's killing people on the African continent today. Please like, share and subscribe. Comment in the section below. Let's get into the video. Let me paint a picture of 1958. France's colonial empire is crumbling. The Fourth Republic had collapsed under the weight of its own brutal wars in Indochina and Algeria. These two colonial wars were filled with human rights abuses, war crimes, and crimes against humanity by the French. It wasn't a joke. The Algerian War specifically is still an inspiration for current-day movements for self-determination, like the Palestinians, for example. Independence movements are spreading like wildfire across Africa. France faces a choice: genuine decolonization or a tactical reorganization of its colonies. You can guess which one they chose in the end. Basically, France was not done being a colonizer.
Soon after taking power, de Gaulle drafted a radical new French constitution. Among other things, it proposed independence for France's African colonies, but structured this in such a way that the former colonies would remain militarily, politically, and economically tied to France. France's African colonies would be allowed to vote in a referendum. A yes vote was an endorsement for de Gaulle's plan, independence but with close ties to France. A no vote was a vote for complete political and economic independence.
C'est en ce moment que le gouvernement de Gaulle a préparé ce référendum-là pour justifier aux yeux de l'opinion internationale la légalité, la légitimité du régime français sur les territoires occupés.
In August of 1958, de Gaulle toured the African colonies to promote the yes vote. On the 25th of August, he arrived at Conakry, capital of French Guinea. De Gaulle made his way through cheering crowds to the Territorial Assembly. Here, Sékou Touré rose to bluntly address the French president.
Et Ahmed Sékou Touré a pris la parole pour dire au général de Gaulle que nous préférons la liberté dans la pauvreté à l'opulence dans l'esclavage. C'est ce jour-là qu'il l'a prononcé. Le général de Gaulle et son entourage ont estimé que cela c'est un affront.
On September 28th, the African citizens of French colonies voted. All voted yes except in Guinea, where an astounding 95% voted no.
Only Sékou Touré in Guinea votes not and is punished very severely by the French for doing that. All aid, all school teachers, there are stories of taps being ripped out of walls and so on by the departing French, which throws Sékou Touré very much onto the mercy of the Soviet Union at that particular juncture.
There is no dignity without freedom. We prefer freedom in poverty to riches in slavery. Guinea voted categorically no. The only French African colony with the courage to choose sovereignty over dependence. France's response revealed the true nature of their civilizing mission in Africa. They didn't just leave Guinea, they systematically destroyed the country. French administrators removed light bulbs from government buildings, destroyed medical supplies, confiscated urban planning documents, and launched Operation Perso. This was a covert campaign to flood Guinea's economy with counterfeit currency and destabilize the Touré government. This wasn't just revenge, it was a message to every other African country. This is what happens when you reject French generosity. Every other territory got the message. They voted yes to the French community, trading political independence for economic subjugation. The French community was never meant to be temporary. It was a blueprint for a new form of colonization, one that would be invisible to the outside world, but would be more profitable than direct occupation ever was. The structures built in 1958 didn't disappear, and when these countries gained formal independence, they evolved, adapted, and became more sophisticated. Today, 66 years later, they form the skeleton of France's African empire. Here's something that will surprise many. 180 million Africans across 14 countries cannot control their own money. This isn't because of a lack of sovereignty, but because France simply won't let them. The CFA franc isn't just a currency, it's a weapon of economic subjugation. Let me break down how this system works. Because once you understand it, you see why France can never let Africa go. First, the reserve requirement. These 14 nations must deposit 50% of the foreign currency reserves in the French treasury. Think about that for a moment. Half of the wealth generated by African labor, resources, and trade sits in French banks today, available for France to invest in its own economy. Second, monetary veto power. France maintains absolute control over the monetary policy of countries that use the CFA franc currency. You want to adjust interest rates to stimulate growth? You need French approval. Want to devalue your currency to make exports more competitive? France decides. Third, the peg trap. The CFA franc is pegged to the euro, making African exports artificially expensive and imports artificially cheap. This ensures African countries remain raw material exporters while importing finished goods. This is a classic colonial trade pattern and has been going on for hundreds of years at this point. France claims they guarantee the CFA franc's convertibility, but guarantees aren't free. In exchange, France extracts preferential access to natural resources, priority in government contracts, and lastly, the right to deploy military force to protect their investments in Africa. Here's what makes the system unique. No other former colonial power maintains such control over their former colonies' currencies. Britain doesn't control the monetary policy of India or Nigeria. Spain doesn't dictate Argentina's interest rates. Only France has preserved this level of economic dominance till this day. The result? Despite controlling some of the world's richest mineral deposits, CFA countries remain among the world's poorest. Their wealth flows to French banks, while their population lack access to basic services. Chad has oil, but no electricity for most of its citizens. Niger supplies uranium for French nuclear power plants, but ranks 189th out of 191 countries in human development. This isn't underdevelopment as you know it. This is engineered poverty. Poverty is engineered into the CFA structure. Let me show you something that will change how you see France's clean energy success. French nuclear power isn't powered by French uranium, it's powered by African poverty. Niger, one of the world's poorest nations, supplies 15 to 20% of the uranium that generates 70% of France's electricity. For over 50 years, French company Orano has extracted billions in uranium wealth while leaving 20 million tons of radioactive waste and communities without electricity. Here's the twisted irony. Niger mines uranium that lights up Paris, but only 17% of Nigerians have access to electricity. French cities glow, while African villages remain in darkness. Move to Chad, where French giant Total Energies has dominated oil extraction for decades. Despite being a significant oil producer, a majority of revenues flow to French shareholders, while Chadian citizens remain in poverty. But oil extraction is just one of the tentacles of France's economic octopus. Through the Bolloré Group, France controls 60% of West African ports. Just think about what that means. France literally controls how goods flow in and out of multiple African nations. From Abidjan to Douala, African countries can't trade without French permission and infrastructure. This isn't partnership. It's a systemic strangulation of African economic independence. In the Ivory Coast, the world's largest cocoa producer, French companies have perfected the art of value extraction. Ivorian farmers earn less than $1 a day growing cocoa for the global chocolate market, which is worth over $100 billion annually. French companies don't just buy cheap cocoa, they control the entire value chain. They process raw cocoa in France, manufacture chocolate products, and sell them back to African consumers at inflated prices. Africans grow the cocoa but can't actually afford the chocolate made. This pattern repeats itself across every sector. Africans provide raw materials and cheap labor, while French companies capture profits through processing, shipping, and marketing. This is neo-colonialism at work in 2025. The elf scandal in the 1990s gave us a rare glimpse behind the curtain. You can say it showed us how the sausage is made. French oil company Elf, with direct ties to the French government, was exposed for massive corruption across Africa, paying bribes to African leaders, rigging contracts, and using the infamous and pretty corrupt France-Afrique networks to maintain French control. The scandal revealed how French companies and politicians worked together to extract African wealth while keeping compliant leaders in power through systemic corruption. Today, France has one of the largest gold reserves in the world, with almost 2,500 gold reserves despite not having a single gold mine in the country. While Mali has 14 gold mines but only 800 tons in reserves. Without this constant flow of African wealth, France's economy would face a crisis that would make 2008 look like a minor event. Right now, as you watch this video, there are over 5,000 French troops permanently stationed across Africa. They are not peacekeepers, they are economic guardians protecting France's African economic empire. Let me show you the pattern that reveals the true purpose of French military intervention on the continent. Operation Serval. In 2013, France launched Operation Serval in the Sahel. If you ask the French, they will tell you that the goal of this operation was to fight Islamic extremists in Mali. Look at the mathematical precision of French military deployments. Ivory Coast, 2011, political crisis in the world's largest cocoa producer. Chad, multiple interventions since 2008 in a major oil producer. Central African Republic, 2013, rich uranium and diamonds. France is also working with terror groups including Al-Qaeda and ISIS affiliates across the Sahel who are actively killing thousands of people in the region. Every single intervention has protected French economic interests first, stability second. The pattern is so consistent, it's almost mathematical. The France-Afrique network is a shadow network of political influence across the former French colonies. It's not just military bases, it's a web of corruption, installed leaders, and economic dependency. When protests erupt against a French mining company in Burkina Faso, for example, French troops deploy within 48 hours. When Niger's government questions uranium contracts, the same story unfolds. Here's a painful truth. French military presence serves a simple function: protect those who play along with the system and eliminate those who don't. It's as simple as that. Leaders who cooperate get French protection and access to French markets.
In 1965, the CIA helped him become the president of the Central African country called Zaire, formerly the Congo. His immense personal wealth, say his critics, is paradoxically about equal to his country's huge foreign debt, and that is a sum of some $5 billion.
Those who challenge the system, just ask Thomas Sankara, Muammar Gaddafi, even Laurent Gbagbo in Ivory Coast. Ask them how that worked out for them. This isn't how foreign policy is supposed to work. Again, don't forget to subscribe. We're trying to get this account to 10K pretty quickly. Here's the uncomfortable truth that French politicians will never admit. France isn't just exploiting Africa, it's completely trapped by its own system of exploitation. French politics, currently on the brink, will also likely face collapse, and the future of the Fifth Republic will be in jeopardy. Genuine jeopardy. But it gets worse. Over 250,000 French jobs depend directly on African operations. That's 250,000 families whose livelihoods are built on this exploitative relationship. Remove the economic foundation, which is Africa, and you look at unemployment rates that would likely topple any French government, and the only winners will likely be the far right. France's nuclear energy program, the supposed crown jewel of French engineering, depends largely on African uranium. Niger alone supplies the uranium that generates 15 to 20% of France's electricity. When Niger's government changed in 2023, French officials panicked behind closed doors. This isn't energy independence, it's energy colonialism disguised as technological advancement.
France's fertility performance is its healthcare system, of course. Not only is it considered one of the best in the world, it's also very generous.
From the moment you find out you're pregnant, you get almost monthly checkups, and you get at least 3 ultrasounds, and all of this is reimbursed by Sécurité Sociale, France's healthcare system. It also throws in a free dental checkup, and from the 6th month of your pregnancy, 6 months into your pregnancy onwards, all medical visits are 100% free, and you don't have to pay anything up front.
Here's a revelation that will shatter some illusions. European social democracies, including France, have built their welfare state on systemic extraction of wealth from the global south. France exploits its former African colonies for this benefit. Those comfortable unemployment benefits, free healthcare, free education, they are subsidized by African poverty. French economist Thomas Piketty has documented how European social programs depend on maintaining an exploitative relationship with the former colonies. African nations want genuine economic independence, control over their own resources, currencies, and development paths. But France literally cannot afford to allow this to happen without restructuring its entire economic model. France faces budget crisis with deficits exceeding 6% of GDP. The pressure to maintain African extraction grows stronger, not weaker, even as African independence movements gain momentum. France has built its entire modern economy on the foundation of African dependency. Unlike other former colonial powers who diversified their economies, France doubled down on resource extraction and monetary control. The result? A 21st century economy that depends on 19th century colonial relationships just to survive. The next generation inherits these realities on both sides. French children grow up with educational opportunities funded partly by African resource wealth. African children in resource-rich areas often lack access to quality education despite sitting on mineral fortune. Here's the tragedy. Both sides, Africa and France, have become prisoners of this system. The French economy relies on these resource flows to maintain competitiveness. African economies struggle to develop because existing arrangements discourage local processing and manufacturing. Essentially, it makes it hard to industrialize. When African countries try to renegotiate these terms, it triggers economic instability in France. This vulnerability to Africa explains why France has such an aggressive foreign policy posture towards the continent. When France attempts reforms, it faces pressure from big business built on these relationships. This is the underlying capitalism that drives the neo-colonial relationship of France. France preaches socialism and social welfare in French elections, but in Africa is rugged, bootstrap, individualistic capitalism, and they always seem to win. Something fundamental is shifting across Africa. French officials are terrified. Look at the streets of Bamako today, or Ouagadougou, or Niamey. Young Africans are burning French flags, demanding real independence and connecting the dots between their poverty at home and the prosperity in France. This isn't your father's independence movement. Today's African youth are educated, connected, and angry. They understand exactly how the system works. Leaders like Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso represent the new generation. Leaders who would rather face poverty in dignity than wealth in slavery. When Emmanuel Macron called Traoré ungrateful, he revealed the colonial mindset that still dominates French thinking. The audacity of calling Africans ungrateful for rejecting a system designed to impoverish them shows how deeply colonial attitudes remain embedded in French political culture. The real pressure for change isn't coming from African protests. It's coming from economic reality. The French system of African extraction is becoming less profitable and more costly to maintain. Chinese industry is offering better deals without the military strings attached. Other global powers provide investment without demanding monetary subservience. French competitive advantage, based on cohesion rather than value, is eroding. This generation is also no longer afraid. They have nothing to lose. Africa is young and growing. By 2050, 1 in 4 people on Earth will be African. This isn't a continent France can control through old colonial relationships. The mathematics of global power are shifting, and France's African empire is on the wrong side of history. Most importantly, the system isn't sustainable for either side. The French economy needs to diversify beyond colonial extraction, and Africa needs to develop independent industrial capacity. The current relationship prevents both outcomes. So what happens if Africa cuts ties tomorrow? What if the CFA franc is abandoned? Military bases are closed and resources contracts are renegotiated. France would lose access to 40% of its uranium supply overnight. The lights in Paris might start flickering. The CFA francs will collapse, taking billions in French reserves with it. French businesses would lose preferential access to $1 trillion market. The French Fifth Republic, as we know it, would face an existential crisis. For Africa, the picture is completely different. The continent has everything needed to thrive independently. The resources, the people, the potential. African countries are already proving this. We can see the technological advancements all over East Africa, and we see the economic diversification in parts of the West. The question isn't whether Africa can thrive without France. The question is whether France can actually survive without Africa. And like many experts in France, I suspect the answer is a no. History shows us what France does when its imperial power is threatened. The savage destruction of Guinea and its economy in 1958 is a classic example. Till today, you can argue France has never truly forgiven the people of Guinea for that vote. The same way France has never forgiven Haiti, the world's only successful slave revolt 170 years before. This included the systemic sabotage of leaders who dared to challenge French dominance. Africa has a choice. Continue enabling France's addiction or force both continents towards a healthier relationship. France has a choice. Restructure its economy for genuine independence or face an inevitable collapse when Africa finally says enough. Victory for the African people will only come when French presence in Africa mirrors that of Portugal. Historically significant, but currently irrelevant. The addiction, however, is mutual, but the solution is not. France, as currently structured, cannot thrive without Africa. The only question left is, how long will it take for both continents to face the truth? Thanks for watching, guys. Hit the comment section, like, subscribe, share. Let me know what you think about this video. Stay tuned for the next one. That's coming really soon.